Time for some thoughts about the Battle of Ohio, Part 1, 2024. Cincinnati Bengals traveled to Cleveland. Hadn't won a division game, hadn't won a conference game. Well, they got both done in one game on the road against the Cleveland Browns. And it was grimy, it was gritty, it wasn't pretty, but it was a win. And the Bengals have had some pretty losses. I mean, that loss to Kansas City, that loss to Baltimore, man, they were instant classics. Networks loved them. Beautiful. Lost. I'll take ugly wins over pretty losses any day of the week. We've talked about that before, and I don't care how it happened. It goes in that W column, and it gets them to 1-1 in the division. So life life is good. They get their first win in the division, first win in the conference. So let's get into some reasons why they won the football game. Nick Chubb knew when he got introduced, he was going to be last in the pregame introductions, and the place went crazy. Nick Chubb was back. 10 games against the Bengals. Prior 10 before this one, he had 600-yard rushing games. So they thought, okay, let's get Nick Chubb going. Let's get our running game going. The Bengals shut Nick Chubb down. 22 yards on 11 carries. As a matter of fact, the running back position in its entirety for the Cleveland Browns on the day, 16 carries, 33 attempts, a little over 2 yards a carry. They did a really good job in the running game. Thompson Robinson got out with one on a nice little ball handling. He got out in the perimeter for 34 yards. That's a big play. You can't take it away. It happened. But that's what gave them 77 yards on 21 carries, 3.7 average. So they handled Chubb. On the defensive side of things, the guy that they had to neutralize was Myles Garrett. And let's take a look at stat lines for Myles Garrett. No sacks. I know that. He came into the football game with 12 sacks against the Cincinnati Bengals. He didn't get any in this football game. He had 4 tackles. He had 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback hurry. That is it. No sacks, no passes defensed, no forced fumbles, nothing like that. In fact, that was the biggest reason the Bengals won the football game, in my opinion. They didn't put the ball on the ground at all. 0 fumbles, obviously 0 lost fumbles, 0 interceptions. The Cleveland Browns suffered 2 interceptions, and they put the ball on the ground one time, recovered the fumble, but they did fumble the football. And the other thing is the Bengals got to stop on 4th down. So, they're in a situation now for the season where they've got they're +3 and 4th down stops, and they're +2 in the turnover department now. So in my mind, they're +5. And that's a big reason why they're on the run a little bit, like they are winning the last couple of football games. But let's take a look at the tandem for the Cincinnati Bengals on the edge. Myles Garrett on the edge. All right, how about Sam Hubbard? He had 3 unassisted tackles. He had a quarterback sack. He had a tackle for loss. He had 3 quarterback hurries. He had an interception on a deflected football, made a good play on that, his first career interception, pass defensed, and then he forced the fumble that we were talking about that they didn't recover. But that's a stat line more like Myles Garrett, filling the stat sheet stuffer. Trey Hendrickson, he had 2 quarterback sacks. That's his 10th as a Cincinnati Bengal, 10th game that he's had multiple quarterback sacks in the same game. Couple tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hurries. Yeah, he had a pass defensed. I mean, the edge, the Cincinnati Bengals, which was much more disruptive than the edge for the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland made some noise inside. Their interior guys played a little bit better than I think was expected, but they really did a good job of handling the 2 people offensively that they had to handle going into the football game. I think that was a big factor in the game. You got to give a lot of credit to the Cleveland Browns. I know we don't like to do that, but they played a very, very smart football game defensively. Their defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, is very, very good, very intelligent defensive coordinator. He breaks tendencies, and he does it all the time against the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's a tribute to Joe Burrow and the weapons that he has. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. He played more zone on 3rd down than he has all year. I mean, they've been a man team on 3rd down. And they didn't want to do that against the Cincinnati Bengals. And he played more 2 safeties deep. Not a ton, but he played more than he has played. He's not a 2 safeties deep guy. But with Higgins and Chase, he feels like he's got to have flexibility, when to double, how to double in the red zone, double other areas of the football field. What do I have to do there? Bottom line is, with all that said, and the funky fronts that he had, Sometimes, I'm sure Joe came up to the line of scrimmage and said, man, that front, that is funky looking. There's a potential blitz package out of this that I don't want to mess with. He'd probably check to a run and try to handle it, see if they could hit a crease, hit a gap. So you got to tip your cap to Schwartz. I thought he had a heck of a game plan. And I'm telling you, the Cleveland Browns, they're solid up front and their back end is sticky. And they have a good group in the secondary. And they play well against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a familiarity thing. They understand what they're doing. They understand how to do it. And Joe, in the first half, he was like, boy, they're giving me some different looks here. I don't want to turn this thing over. And he was holding that football for a little while on Joe, like uncharacteristically. They made some adjustments at halftime and then ended up with a couple of big plays in the second half. 18-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase, 25-yard touchdown to Higgins. They combined for 14 catches, 137 yards, and those 2 touchdowns. So they still impacted the football game. Joe Burrow, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdown passes, I should say. No interceptions, quarterback rating 108.9. That's more than efficient. They didn't run the ball as well as they had hoped to. Only 2.4 per carry. You take Jamar Chase's reverse out of there. That's 24 carries, 48 yards. That's 2 yards a pop. That's not going to win you a whole lot of football games in terms of that type of running game, but they were persistent with it. They ran the ball 25 times, threw it 25 times. And I think when they got a 2-score lead, particularly in the second half, they said, all right, one thing we don't want to do is turn the football over and give them an extra possession and hurt ourselves and give them positive field position. Let's run the football and play action off of that a little bit if we can and just make sure that we manage the football game that way. Our defense is playing really well. Special teams have had a solid game. Let's not mess it up offensively. I know that's a conservative way to look at it, but you're on the road against a darn good defensive football team, and I think that was probably the mindset. Hindsight, maybe you wish you did a little bit more in terms of attacking them, but at the time it was probably felt like the right thing to do, and they got out of there with a touchdown victory on the road in the division. That's a positive thing. The special teams. How about Charlie Jones? 100-yard kickoff return. The one thing that you wanted to do was get off to a fast start. Cleveland's been on the road 3 straight games, and Chubb was coming back. So they do the announcement. He's the last guy announced, and the place is going crazy. And 12 seconds later, the Bengals are up 7-0 because, Charlie Jones takes it to the house 100 yards. When you get an unconventional, unscripted score like that, it is a big deal. The Bengals got the lead 12 seconds into the football game and never gave it up. And they never fell behind. They were never tied in the football game, courtesy of a mixed extra point. Tough day for the kickers. Cleveland's kicker missed a 49 field goal and an extra point, 49-yarder from a field goal standpoint and an extra point. Money Mack misses from 50. Wasn't a great day for kickers. So, there were a lot of things to factor into this football game. But Charlie Jones, not only a 100-yard kickoff return, he had a 23-yard, I think it was, 23-yard punt return. So he touched the ball 5 times as a returner for the Bengals in the football game and got 139 yards, averaged 28 yards a touch as a returner. That dog will hunt all day, every day. And then in terms of field position, the Cincinnati Bengals dominated that aspect of things. 14 possessions for each football team. The Bengals' average drive start was a 36-yard line. Cleveland's was the 25-yard line. 11 yards times 14 possessions, 154 hidden yards. We're talking a football field and a half right there. And then you look at the penalties. That was one of my keys to the game. Cleveland had 50 penalties going into the football game. That was amongst the most in the National Football League. They got 10 in the football game yesterday. They got 60 penalties now. They got 10 yesterday for 80 yards. The Bengals had 3 for 37. That's 7 penalties for 43 yards in favor of the Cincinnati Bengals. So you add up the field position and the penalty yards, you got almost 2 football fields of yards. The Cleveland Browns said, here you go. And the Bengals said, oh, thank you. In this type of football game, the meat grinder that it was, those kind of things add up, and they add up big time. So, bottom line is, you take the victory and you come back and you got things to work on. Offense was okay, did enough, made enough plays to win the football game. Defensively, I thought they played a really good football game. In the last 8 quarters, they've given up 21 points, 10.5 points a game. That dog will hunt now. That'll get it done in the National Football League. And then special teams, one of 3 kickoff returns this year in the National Football League for a touchdown. And how about Charlie Jones? That puts Charlie Jones in a very, very small class. Lamar Parrish and Charlie Jones are the only two returners to have a punt return touchdown and a kickoff return touchdown in their careers. And Charlie Jones has done it, like very short time frame apart from each other. So that's big time. I mean, Charlie Jones had not returned many kickoffs in his career. To take that one to the house, and the adjustment that Darren Simmons made with Drew Sample and had him basically almost an I formation lead blocker for Charlie Jones. And when the Red Sea parted, Drew Sample got his block, and Charlie hit that crease, broke to the right like Darren Simmons told him to, and off to the races you go. So a lot of positive things happened in that football game. Miles to go before they rest, obviously. But, they made some good adjustments at halftime. People are going to probably criticize them for being so conservative in the second half and the fourth quarter of that football game. But I thought that more positives than not. And you got to give a tip of the cap to Ford. I mean, Orlando Brown goes down early. Ford played 39 snaps. And how about this? The Cincinnati Bengals only had 53 snaps again. I mean, they've just barely cracked the 100-snap mark in the last two games. They've been just possessed, time of possession, 9 minutes to their disadvantage and to the favor of the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland ran 77 snaps to their 53. And the Bengals only averaged 4.2 yards per play, and Cleveland averaged 4.4. So it was a defensive battle. There's no question about it. But, you're going to have to get back on track offensively. If the defense continues to play like they're playing, the Bengals can get back on track offensively like they were for about a month period of time there and play a complete football game, totally complementary football game, offense, defense, special teams, all three phases playing at a high level instead of offense, okay, special teams, defense, big time. Defense, not very good. Offense, special teams playing at a big time level. All three phases. Let's get them back in sync. And honestly, going to have to do it because the Philadelphia Eagles come to town. And the Philadelphia Eagles, man, they hung 28 points and over 260 rushing yards on the New York Giants. And the Bengals know the New York Giants defense is legit, and it was in New York, just like the Bengals played them in New York. Barkley had a homecoming. Saquon Barkley, homecoming in New York, 176 yards rushing. Man, they ran the ball 50 times, over 50 times down the throats of the New York Giants for 260-plus yards rushing. So you know what you're looking at there. The Philadelphia Eagles have good offensive and defensive lines. I think that's a big strength of their football team. They've got a running back, Barkley, that is averaging over 6 yards a carry for the season. As a team, they're averaging 5 yards a carry. Barkley has 5 touchdowns rushing. Hurts has 4. So, I mean, they run the football and then play action pass to A.J. Brown. He's only got 16 catches on the season. That's tied for third most on his team, but he's averaging over 20 yards a catch. He has a 67-yard touchdown, 3 touchdowns and 16 catches. They run it, play action pass, A.J. Brown, over 20 yards a catch. You got to be alert for that. They've got so many explosives, the Philadelphia Eagles. Barkley has a 65-yard touchdown. Brown has a 67-yard touchdown. Goddard, the tight end, has a 61-yard catch. Smith, another receiver, 45-yard touchdown. I mean, they have explosives, and one area that they're struggling in is turnovers. They're -6. They've given away 8 times. They've only got 2 takeaways. They don't have a fumble recovery. They've 6 fumbles. They haven't recovered one of them, and they got only 2 interceptions on the season. And how about this? Miraculously enough, they're the only team in the NFL that hasn't scored in the first quarter. They don't have a first quarter point. They've now scored 23-0 in the first quarter. So they struggle to start football games, but then they get after it. They've outscored people by 13 in the second quarter, 16 in the third quarter, 5 in the fourth quarter. So the Bengals are going to have to get off to that good start and make Philadelphia play from behind and maybe not run the ball as much. Don't give up that first point in the first quarter of the Philadelphia Eagles. But this is a very solid, sound football team. They've got really good roster offensively and defensively in the trenches, just like this podcast. They're good, man. Lane Johnson's been around forever, but he's still performing at a high level at the right tackle position. Their left tackle is a giant, 6'8", 360, and can move. I mean, he's not a stiff. Obviously, they lost Kelsey at center. They moved Cam Jurgens from guard in there to center. Becton, they moved him from tackle to guard, so they made some adjustments there. But Saquon Barkley, obviously, Jalen Hurts, they've got weapons. And then defensively, the 2 interior defensive tackles. The interior of the Bengals offensive line, once again, Jordan Davis hasn't really lived up to expectations, but he's gifted. He's physically talented player. Jalen Carter can be a nightmare inside as a defensive tackle, wrecking game plan. So they've got plenty of players. They're coached very, very well. They've got coaches that have proven themselves in the National Football League. Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. Vic Fangio has been around forever as a defensive coordinator. He's got every scheme, every trick in the book. There's nothing that he hasn't seen that he won't pull out there. So, got to basically make sure that you got every nuance covered in that area. And Nick Sirianni under some fire, but basically as a Philadelphia Eagles head coach, he's won 2 games for every loss that he has. So, and they respond to him. They seem to get it done. So it's going to be a challenge. But the Cincinnati Bengals have not won at Paycor Stadium yet. 0-3. It's time. It's past time. I mean, everything's due. Got to get it done. The crowd will be in full throat. Got to get a victory against the Philadelphia Eagles and bring the record even Steven at 4-4. This football team, I think, feels pretty good about itself right now. And then before we sign off, let's talk about the injuries. The Bengals went into this football game the healthiest they've been all season long. They only had 4 guys on the injured list all week long, and only one of them was questionable. Well, all of them by game time were up and ready to play in the football game. They didn't have anybody down on the active list because of injury. And I'll be a son of a gun. They go into the football game and they sustain a couple of injuries, and but neither one turned out to be as bad as they thought it might be. So I think they're going to be in good shape in that regard. You have at the left tackle position, Orlando Brown Jr. left the football game early, and they thought it was a knee injury at first, but it's a calf injury, and the calf attaches up there. The highest part of the calf attaches up by the knee. So it's a calf problem, is my understanding, and all depends. First, second, third degree tear, whatever. Hopefully it's one of those first or seconds. Hopefully it's not a serious injury. The fact that he was out there for the entire football game and helping Coach Cody Ford every snap as he came off the football field on a series-by-series basis, I thought was a great sign. Geno Stone looks like he has a tibia injury. The fibula is the big one. The tibia is a smaller bone. Fibula is the weight-bearing. Tibia is not. He's got an injury to the tibia. They were kind of checking out here to take pictures again and see if there's any kind of a crack or a fracture or anything like that. But they're hoping that it's like a bone bruise. And the fact that he was standing there in the locker room and they were doing the game balls and the locker room celebration, I think is a very positive sign as well. So hopefully they avoided serious injury, and both of those guys will be back contributing in a very, very timely fashion. I'm thinking Orlando Brown, he might even play this week. Like to see him out there against the Philadelphia Eagles. Like to see Geno Stone out there as well. But we'll see how all that unfolds. Pretty much sums it up. Cincinnati Bengals have won 2 in a row. 2 on the road. Let's get 1 at home. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team. Opportunity knocking.